Hello there and welcome to Eco's Diary. Our topic of discussion today, or our focus, is on climate change and gender. Definitely when it comes to climate change effects, they are not neutral, just depending on whether you are a man or a woman. And that's exactly what we will be focusing on today, just understanding how exactly does climate change effects affect a man and woman in the community. Remember, earlier on, that is the Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action launched a climate change, gender and vulnerability mapping that is going to happen here in Kenya. The aim is to understand how climate change affects different genders. Still, that's our focus of discussion today. We'll first of all just listen in to what exactly happened during the launch. Then we will have a one-on-one with the director of Agnes, which is an organization or initiative that focuses on climate change matters. My name is Aida Munzatsi, and definitely Eco's Diary begins now.
This launch marks a significant milestone in Kenya's efforts towards effectively addressing the impacts of climate change, particularly for vulnerable groups, in a bid to promote gender-responsive planning and decision-making in Kenya's response to climate change. Gender equality is a critical component of development. The Constitution of Kenya, the Kenya Vision 2030, the National Gender and Development Policy, and other supporting policies and legislation recognize the importance of addressing gender issues in all sectors. Moreover, the Sustainable Development Goal number 5 is dedicated to achieving gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. Despite a progressive legislative framework, there are still challenges in addressing the inequalities across sectors, which are exacerbated by climate change. As we congregate here today, therefore, we must start asking ourselves questions such as, does the effect of climate change on agriculture, on water and energy impact on me differently by virtue of my being male or female? Climate change presents a major threat globally, and indeed to Kenya's sustainable development. It hampers the effective realization of our Vision 2030, which aims to create a competitive and prosperous nation with high quality of life for everyone. Our country continues to experience the impacts of climate change as weather patterns become increasingly unpredictable and climate-related disasters increase in frequency and magnitude. Our economy, which depends on climate-sensitive natural resources and sectors, is adversely impacted by prevailing climate-related circumstances, which have the potential to increase vulnerability, reverse development gains, and further entrench gender equalities.
Girls are more impacted by climate change anxiety. When I talk anxiety, it's the behavioral, the cognitive, the functional response to climate change. Who is more impacted between a boy and a girl by the climate change? Just even, there's that feeling you get when you watch livestock dying on the TV, is it? When you see people have been swept away by floods, do you sleep the same way? You will go sleep thinking, having so much worry. That's what we are calling the anxiety. And how do you react to that? You will keep on worrying yourself being flooded, yourself having your livestock being dying. Those are the research which we did. And also we found out that the day scholars have more anxiety than the boarders. Because the day scholars, they are the one exposed to this. They are the one going to school in the morning, finding a river is flooded. So they can't cross, they will miss school. So they have these worries. And you know, all this contributes to mental instability. You have seen the cases of suicide, the way people are committing suicide. So these are the things which we are trying to address.
Climate crisis is not gender neutral. Women, girls, and people with disability experience the greatest impacts of climate change, which amplifies existing inequalities and poses unique threats to their livelihood, health, and safety. Giving women and people with disability increased access to resources can reduce vulnerability and create more resilience in households, communities, in climate change. In addition, involving them in decision-making can help drive the adaptation of climate change policies and strengthen mitigation and adaptation efforts by ensuring they benefit from the needs of vulnerable communities.
All right, welcome. And as I had mentioned earlier on, we'll just be having a one-on-one to understand better or deeper on matters climate change and gender. And joining me is Jacqueline Nekesa, who is a director in the State Department of Gender and Affirmative Action. Jack, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for just creating time to have this conversation with us.
Thank you.
And first of all, just let us know about the event that the PS just launched. What is the importance of this when it comes to issues of climate change and gender?
So thank you very much. Today's event, as you are aware, is a national launch of the Gender and Climate Vulnerabilities Hotspot Mapping. Again, as you may be aware, as a country we struggle with statistics or facts when it across sectors, so climate change is just one of them. And so for us, this is a great milestone, just to enable us to have some data and statistics as regards the nexus between gender and climate change. So what the mapping will be seeking to achieve is just to understand what kind of vulnerabilities climate-related exist across the country. So we will be looking at the 47 counties, how they experience climate change, and therefore how men and women in those counties are vulnerable. And beyond men and women, looking at the age aspect, socioeconomic status, the kind of activities that they carry out, the socioeconomic activities. You'll find that some of the counties are active in agriculture, some it's about pastoralism, some could be fishing and so on. And we know that climate change affects all these areas differently. But most importantly, men and women, boys and girls also interact with these sectors differently. So you find in some communities it is women who are largely engaged in agricultural activities. Some communities it's men who are engaged in pastoral activities. Children, people with disabilities, the elderly are all affected differently. So that's what the study seeks to find out. And then the outcome of the study will then help both government and non-state actors. And by government, we mean national government and county governments will have data that then informs interventions that seek to address very real needs, as opposed to coming up with interventions that are general in nature.
All right, I like the fact that you've mentioned how this mapping is going to help in terms of data. You've also mentioned of the different areas that are related to gender. Now, from where you see, just help us understand, how would you say climate change affects let me say women and girls, because even as you conduct your research, I'm sure